Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is that you are and wherever you may be. Thank you very much for making us a part of your day. I am Brad Franklin, a creative conscience right here in Chesterfield. I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. We are continuing to make our way through the 5 magisterial districts, like I like to do at least once a year. And today we make a stop in Matoaca with Kevin Carroll. Mr. Carroll, welcome to the Board of Supervisors. Sir, how are you?
I'm good today. Glad to be here.
I'm very glad to have you here and certainly glad to talk to you about the Matoaca District. Before we dive into that, I like to do a little welcome back for you. This is, I think, your 4th time on the podcast. What does it mean to you to have been elected to the Board of Supervisors once again and to be able to continue to do this work for the folks in Matoaca?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that you just have to pinch yourself every day and say, wow, I get to do this. Truthfully. Yeah. It's an honor. And, you know, the first time when I won my first election, I'll be honest with you, I was like, oh my God, what happened? And and then after doing it, it's really rewarding to know that the community would reelect you.
Yeah.
And that is kind of, I think, a public judgment of the job that you've done.
Right.
Right. And so it's an honor, and I'm very humbled to be able to do this.
Yeah. One of the things I've been doing across the different podcasts with the members of the Board of Supervisors is to something actually that an idea that Mr. Holland sort of planted in my head that piggybacked off of something my colleague Jim McConnell did when he did that Q&A series with all of you on his blog, and kind of get into the idea that a lot of folks know you five as people who are out at meetings, you're out at public functions, but there's obviously a life that you have away from the public's business. So if I can, what are some of the things that you like to do to spend your time? What are some of the things you like to do outside of board business? What are your hobbies, your passions?
Right now, it's getting healthy.
Yeah.
I think that some people know that I had to have open heart surgery in February, and I've been on the recovery since. It gives you a different perspective in life.
Yeah.
Perhaps sometimes we get so wrapped up in what we do and every day that we forget what's important. So
right.
What I would say, I love spending time with my wife and my family, on the outdoors, in all types of facets, whether it's golfing or fishing or hunting, or
right.
just sitting on the back porch that I built and just watching the birds and the deer and the turkey. Yeah. And it's just, I would tell people, if you don't do it, you should take time and stop and smell the roses, as they say. Yeah.
And obviously, as somebody who has, that sort of background, I can imagine too that this is a perfect time of year. It feels like the chance to be outside now more than ever. Now, unless pollen is your enemy, in which case, if pollen is your enemy, I apologize if I brought this up. Not you personally. I'm talking about the folks that are listening. In terms of business wise, right, for the county, let's start in in sort of the broader county topics, and we'll dig a little bit deeper into the district specifically. But obviously, we're coming out of budget season. Ironic that budget season and pollen season kind of coexist a little bit. But as we record this, the public hearings
both necessary.
That's very true. That's a really good point, actually. That's really good. So public hearings have been held. The budget corresponding tax rates have all been set and adopted. I'm curious to get your point of view on the budget itself and your thoughts on some of the key pieces from this year's budget.
Well, I mean, obviously the Chesterfield County budget is large. We're the 4th most populous county in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We've seen a population growth, unprecedented in the last 10 to 15 years. So there's a lot that we are, have to take notice of. Obviously with me, public safety is the number one priority. So making sure that we're meeting our staffing levels for fire, police, and sheriff and emergency communications. We increased the fire department the last 2 years by 48 positions. Is still not going to be enough based on some other issues that have, happened with some of the volunteer rescue squads not being able to meet their commitment.
Right. Yep.
So we need to make sure we have public safety funded, make sure our schools are funded, make sure that we can, have a competitive compensation for our employees, for all employees, not just public safety and teachers, but all of our non-sworn employees as well. And so that's been a focus in the last couple of years. I mean, this budget, the majority of the increased funding is focused on salary and compensation for our employees. And then, part of, keeping up with our infrastructure, and our debt service and how we manage that, with the bond referendum that was passed a couple of years ago in 2022. It's part of our debt service.
Right.
And so last year when I was chair, when I talk about being humbled, I sat in an office. I actually asked one of the staff to come take a picture of it because I couldn't believe I was doing it. And I'm sitting there signing a $105 million bond issuance.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's a moment, right?
Well, it's taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah.
It's big taxpayers' dollars, but those monies are being used to build, schools, libraries, police stations. It's fire stations. I mean, there's a lot of tremendous infrastructure that's coming to the not just Matoaca District but the whole county.
Yeah.
So we also did tax relief for
Right.
both the seniors, something that when we got elected years ago had not been kept up with, and so we made adjustments to our senior tax relief program to keep up with the rate of inflation, and now we're going to actually bake it in so that it's automatically booked into the budget every year to keep up with that. And then we also did tax relief for personal property by increasing the discount rate.
Which seems like a pretty unique thing. I haven't seen many localities in the area region doing something like that.
Well, I mean, personal property taxes, I think, is something people are very passionate about. I mean, they're like, why do I have to pay tax on my car? I already paid it.
Yeah.
Or why do I have to pay tax on my boat? I already paid it.
Right.
And what I try and tell people is, the tax burden from personal property is what I consider to be a shared burden to support all of the county budget, but certainly public safety. If someone's car is stolen, you're going to call the police.
Right.
If your car catches on fire, you're going to call the fire department.
Right.
If you get in a crash, they're both coming.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but when they did the personal property relief tax under Governor Gilmore, they allocated $950 million into the budget, $41 million which was allocated to Chesterfield. It's never been increased, and as we've seen cars grow in the county, it's created a discount rate that's increasingly decreased on how much savings people would get. So, cutting the rate by 25 cents affects not just the personal property relief for personal cars, but also commercial vehicles. So it helps businesses, small businesses, and big businesses too. Yeah. So we focused on a variety of things in this budget to make sure we have continuity of service, proper compensation, funding schools, public safety, libraries. And then, I mean, there's much more than that, but we only have about 20 minutes.
Well, we mentioned infrastructure, and given your work with the CVTA, I don't think there's anybody who's better suited to sort of explain this piece of the puzzle. But what the county is doing with the Powhite extension seems exponentially important, not just for the moment, but for the future. Why do you think that is such a big deal for Chesterfield County going forward?
Well, many people live in the western part of the county have said, when are we ever going to build the Powhite Parkway? We've had, the old saying, if you build it, they will come. Well, look what happened when we put 288 in years ago. I was just a young police officer when that road went in, but I've seen exponential growth in the western part of Hull Street, the western part of the Midlothian District, the Clover Hill District, and the Matoaca District because of that road going in. Mm-hmm. And in 91, when the Mag Green case was passed, it was, part of it was predicated on improved infrastructure in schools, but also a road that would connect all the way down to Hull Street. Utilizing Central Virginia Transportation Authority dollars now and using our 50%, part of our 50% pot. For the people who don't know, the CVTA was created by the General Assembly in 2020. It's broken into 3 pots. 50% comes back to the locality, 35% is in a regional transportation pot, and 15% goes to GRTC. We're looking at restructuring how we use our 50% by doing a bond issuance, which will help us get caught up on some of these bigger projects. Right. A lot of people don't realize that VDOT is actually responsible for road maintenance in Chesterfield County. Yeah. And most counties, quite frankly, and of course Chesterfield being the second largest road network behind Fairfax, there's a lot of roads, over 4,400 miles. And so restructuring that will get us caught up on some of that. And then, quite frankly, we just passed our 3rd round of regional transportation package, just like $279 million by the CVTA. And a lot of that money's, quite frankly, coming to projects in Chesterfield County. $37 million of that is actually slated to be pushed to widen Hull Street from Wood Lake all the way out to Otterdale Road. Right. And then I see, part of the Upper Mag West program, that whole case is also requires the Powhite Parkway to be built. Right. And it requires us to widen Hull Street all the way out to where that terminates on Hull Street. Yeah. So it will be a major traffic reliever because Mag Green is it's a very large subdivision, almost 3,500 units when it's done. Mm-hmm. And then if we get industrial growth or commercial growth on the western side of that, it's going to even add to that. But a lot of people that live in those neighborhoods, it will make their life a lot simpler. When we tie in Woolward's Road all the way up to 288, all of those, and these are all funded projects. Yep. So when these come out of the ground, it's going to be some growing pains for the next couple of years. But when they come out of the ground, it's going to make transportation a lot better in that part of the county.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, infrastructure, kind of a theme across a lot of this as we dig a little bit deeper into the district-specific stuff. Let's start with schools. A theme in general, I guess, in terms of your district seems to be infrastructure, and schools is a great example of that, right? You got middle and elementary, a high school, all in the works out there. So give us an update on the latest improvements in schools in Matoaca.
Well, when I got elected the first time, and I'm not trying to be critical when I say this, but facts are facts, there was no plan for new schools in the western part of Hull Street. And we, when the Mag Green case was decided in 91, it was supposed to have a high school, a middle school, and 2 elementary schools. Now, Cosby High School was built since then, and we built Mosley Elementary School and Winnapock Elementary School, but those schools were not keeping up with the growth coming out there.
Right.
So now, we restructured some debt and issued debt to build 2 brand new middle schools. But Fallen Creek is being rebuilt, and now the western area middle school is well under construction, and that's coming along very well. We see that we should see that school opening in 2025.
Good deal.
The next school will be the elementary school. We actually had a public community meeting the other night to kind of roll out what the school will look like, how the layout will be in the complex, and to give the community opportunity to have input on the actual colors and theme of what the school will look like. And so that should, if we get that going, should be out of the ground by 2026. And the high school, which would be south of that off of Duval Road and north-south connector road that needs to be built, 2027.
Yeah.
So unfortunately for the people who live out there, there's going to be some growing pains over the next couple of years.
Right. But it brings with it so much relief in a variety of ways. Well,
those roads, for example, Otterdale and Duval Road, would never see the improvements they're going to see if we weren't putting this infrastructure in there. We're going to widen Duval Road from Otterdale to the north-south connector road to 4 lanes with turn lanes. That never happened. Roundabouts to actually slow people down, which people go, unfortunately, way too fast on these roads.
Right.
Otterdale Road itself will have roundabouts. It'll be brand new paving. We've just fixed the roads in the last couple of years that were flooding. 3 brand new bridges. If that road floods now, you better build an arc because we're all in trouble. We've built those roads so they should not have that issue again.
Yeah. I was going to ask about transportation and sort of road improvements, but you sort of covered a little bit of that. Let's go to the police library piece of this. Now, infrastructure can mean a variety of different things. In some places, it means building and owning what, in some instances, you maybe already had if you were renting. And I think that was something with the police departments and the police stations. It felt like that there was a real effort to sort of modernize, if you will, and as well as sort of take maybe more ownership, so to speak, of sort of where these different pieces of public infrastructure existed. I know there are plans for a new police station as well as library improvements in Matoaca as well. Can you give me some updates on both of those?
Well, yeah, we've rented police stations for years. When I was a rookie, I used to get barbecue sandwiches at Bill's Barbecue on the Providence Road station, and then later on I supervised people. It doesn't smell of barbecue anymore, but nevertheless, I used to eat there, right? I've never felt that we should be renting community buildings like this because, quite frankly, we're using tax dollars to pay an individual who owns a building.
Yeah,
right. So we don't rent libraries, we don't rent fire stations, we don't rent schools. But part of what needed to happen, and I think we're in the right place to do this now, is you really had to define where your population centers are, where your growth is going to be, because when you build a police station or if you build a school, you're building a 100-year building.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think now, based on what we've seen for projected growth, where we know the growth is going to in Western Hull Street is, and the western part of Midlothian is, it's a good time for us to define an exact location for a police station to be front and center in the community, so the community knows where it is.
Right.
Right now the Wood Lake Station is tucked away in a shopping center.
Right.
Has no road frontage on Hull Street whatsoever. We're going to fix that. The new Midlothian Station is going to be right across from Stonebridge at just when you come on under Chip and Hambley on the right hand side.
Right.
Again, a forward facing police station for the community to be able to see that. And so. And this will help us to better deploy resources in the area, and help us to be better for the community. So when these buildings come out of the ground, I think it's going to be a great addition to what our public safety currently has. We're going to rebuild Fire Station 12 in Ettrick. That's part of the bond referendum.
Right.
So that'll move next to Ettrick Elementary School, and it'll be a brand new station. We're getting ready to open up the new Company 8 on Hickory Road. That's almost completed. And that will help the fire department to be able to respond to calls for service. It's more centralized in that district.
Yep.
And it'll cut down on response times. As far as public libraries, we when I got elected, the plan was to add on to Clover Hill Library.
Right.
But that's not where the growth is. The growth is further west.
Yeah.
And so we Matoaca's 207 square miles, had 2 libraries.
Yeah.
And the population growth, when you look at the most growth from 2010 to the census in 2020, over 14,500 people moved in the western part of Hull Street, west of 288.
Yeah.
So that's where the population center is. So
Right.
putting a library out in this campus with the elementary school and the middle school
Makes
and
a lot
not
of
far from the
sense.
high school,
Yeah.
it's a neighborhood schools, neighborhood libraries, and it takes traffic off of Hull Street and puts it on the other roads to relieve some of that traffic congestion.
Right. Now, in terms of, I want to, real quick before we wrap up this, I want to talk a little about development. There's obviously lots of good news in Matoaca in terms of things that are opening up, and like you mentioned, things that are on the way. But there's also things that have recently opened up, things that are making things like life a little bit easier. I know there's the new Chipotle, there's Panera, and different things in the area of that nature. And I know there's been some talk also about the hope for a hospital facility and maybe some corresponding offices west of Otterdale. So why do you feel like these kinds of things are so important? What is it about these aspects? Because we talk about, you mentioned timing just a few minutes ago. The timing is right for, because you sort of know where the growth is and where it's going to be. Why are these things also so important in your view?
Well, some people would basically are against any growth in period. I think moderate growth is healthy. Unfortunately, Matoaca is no such thing as moderate growth. That's western part of Hull Street. It has continued to grow, but with that, you have to provide the amenities that people actually need to make their life better every day. So, right now, if you have to travel far to go to dry cleaners, for example, or to go out to dinner at night.
Right.
Now, the western part of Hull Street, if you look at Hull Street from 288 to Woodlake is 3 miles, to Otterdale is 4 miles. That's where everything is.
Yeah.
If you want to go out to dinner, that's where you're going. You want to go to the grocery store, that's where you're going. Well, the problem is the population between Clover Hill and Matoaca is almost the population of the entire Dale District or the entire Clover Hill District out there living west, utilizing that section.
Right.
So providing more resources further west for the people who are in these 2 huge neighborhoods, Harper's Mill and Mag Green, keeps them from having to come into that population center.
Right.
So Cosby Village opening up with a Chipotle, with a Starbucks, with a Panera Bread, and others. So and then now it also brings with it the need for a hospital, for medical facilities, for doctors. Right now, if you live out there, they do have an emergency room out there at Swift Creek. But then if you got to go to hospital, it's either St. Francis, Chippenham, or Johnston Willis.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who live in those neighborhoods that actually work at those hospitals. Imagine if you build a hospital out there. They don't have to travel as far. They don't have to try and get on 288 or Woolward Road in the morning or at night. They can go right there. And if you have to have a hospital stay and have medical things done, it's right there.
Yeah.
The people who live up off Midlothian Turnpike in the Rubius Road area, they have Johnston Willis. The people who live in the western part have St. Francis. People in the eastern part have Chippenham. And it's time for a hospital out there to service the population. And there's enough, and not to mention for Amelia. How far do people from Amelia have to go to the hospital?
And think about just that entire, what that could mean for, if you just sort of extend that lens down and out, you could realistically think that most of Southside Virginia could really benefit from something of that nature in that part of the state. So we can think about it as being a largely, local county, district specific sort of thing. But
I mean, even for the people all through Matoaca, right? For me, from where I live, it's 11 miles to get out there, but it's still closer than going to Chippenham, still closer than going to Johnston Willis, or going to anywhere else.
Yeah, for sure.
And having one who's had to go to the hospital recently, I know how long that ride is,
right?
And so for anything we can do to make it safer for the community, and for again also transport times for a fire department. Or the rescue squads, the closer you are to the hospital, the quicker you can get someone medical attention, save their life, and get back in service for the next call.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'll get you out of here on this question, as I've done with all of the other board members, and I will do, obviously, with Mr. Engel here in a little bit. But what are some of the challenges that you see facing both the county as a whole and your district specifically in this coming year?
It's always growth. Quite frankly, road infrastructure, we have a lot that we need to catch up on. And we've made some good headway in the last 4 years. Don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of projects coming in the next 2 years. We have intersection improvements, for example, that go from Commonwealth Center Parkway all the way to Woodlake. That will, once implemented, will actually help alleviate traffic congestion.
Right.
We're putting. Expanding an off-ramp from 288 onto Hull Street, and that's hopefully by next year will be completed. We're going to have a connector road that goes from Brad McNair Parkway over to Bailey Bridge. That will help with people south of Hull Street in the morning and evening commute to help alleviate some of that traffic. And then, like I said, working on other infrastructure to provide better amenities. We have an expansion of Horner Park coming, which is going to help people have more places to go to walk, live, and have fun with their kids.
Yeah.
But it's always, the challenge is always when someone brings a zoning case forward, for example, and there's people come out and we don't want this, don't build, don't let them do it. Well, the challenge is weighing, the personal property rights of the people and the families that own these lands and their willingness to sell to a developer against what's being proposed and how it's going to affect the community overall. And so those are always the challenges that we have facing us, and then how we pay for everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it all is relative.
Yeah. It seems like, think about the number. You were listing off when the schools are going to open, and I was thinking, man, it's going to be a busy 4 years, not just obviously in your neck of the woods, but certainly throughout the whole county. But Mr. Carroll, thank you very much for coming on the show, talking to us a little bit about Matoaca, and give us an update on a variety of different topics.
I didn't even talk about Ettrick. There's so much. Matoaca is so big. I mean, it's I do want to say this one thing we just put in.
Okay.
We put a brand new Christmas tree in down to Ettrick Park.
Oh, right.
We hope to be able to have a Christmas celebration at Ettrick Park for our Ettrick community. Yeah. Because, we had one in Dale, which I thought was fantastic. We had one in Bermuda, it was fantastic. And I'm like, you know what? We need that in Ettrick. And so we put a brand new, beautiful Christmas tree in the park. And we'll be planning a celebration with the communities, the Christmas tree lighting sometime in December. Yeah,
as we record this here in the office, there's a literal map behind you. Matoaca, the size of Matoaca it's impossible to miss. Just the simple reality of the area that it covers. So that's a really good point. Like I said, appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about all things Matoaca.
Next time we'll talk about Ettrick, Virginia State University, and all things at the end of the county.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, make sure you check us out on social media. On Twitter, it's at Chesterfield VA, and on Instagram, it's Chesterfield Virginia on Word. And on Facebook, you can check out our podcast page. Just search Chesterfield Behind the Mic. Now, make sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, or wherever it is that you get your shows. And if you're so inclined to give us a rating or review, we greatly appreciate it. As always, a video version of the show is available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website, Chesterfield.gov/podcast. That's also where you can submit feedback anytime, make suggestions, or just reach out to us. You can watch the show on WSCCT Thursday through Sunday at 7 on the weekends at noon. That's Comcast Channel 98 and Verizon Channel 28. Lastly, check out Chesterfield.gov/connect with us to find out a number of other ways to connect with Chesterfield County. My thanks to my director, Martin Stith, my executive producer, Teresa, Bonifas, and all the good folks from Constituent Media Services for all they do. And my thanks to you for joining us today. So, from all of us here in Chesterfield, thanks again for making us a part of your day. We'll see you again real soon. Take good care. From blogs to podcasts, newsletters to alerts, social media, the latest community news, our Connect With Us webpage has you covered. Chesterfield.gov/connect with us, your source for all things Chesterfield.